إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري أنه قال عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة، ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أماه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أماه، إني يشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع عمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال: وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء، أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآله. وقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على محمد وآله. فقال جبرائيل: يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي ثانيا: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. سورة البقرة الفاتحة.
اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات. افضل الصلاة محمد وآل محمد. جتنے آئے تھے آپ کے در پہ کبھی خالی پھرا نہ در سے. میں بھی ہوں آپ کا ایک سوالی کیسے خالی پھروں تیرے در سے. میری جھولی کو مولا تم بھر دو اپنا روزہ ہمیں اب دکھاؤ. یا حسین میری فریاد سن لو اپنا روزہ ہمیں دکھاؤ. سب مل کے یا حسین میری فریاد سن لو اپنا روزہ ہمیں. تم نے لاکھوں کے آنسو ہے پہنچے ٹوٹے دل کو سہارا ہے بخشے. میری امیدوں کو اب نہ توڑو لطف کی ایک نظر ہم پہ کر دو. مولا امداد کرنے کو آؤ اپنا روزہ ہمیں اب دکھاؤ. سب مل کے یا حسین میری فریاد سن لو اپنا روزہ. جو ہے بیمار پاتے شفا ہے نابیناؤں کا نور ملا ہے. ہاتھ پھیلا کے کب سے کھڑا ہوں طالب رحم میں دل جلا ہوں. میرے دامن مرادوں سے بھر دو اپنا روزہ ہمیں اب دکھاؤ. یا حسین میری فریاد سن لو اپنا روزہ ہمیں. اپنی تقدیر سے میں ہوں مایوس کچھ نہیں سوجھتا حال ہے مایوس. آپ کے ہوتے ہوں بے سہارا تم بن میرا نہیں ہے کنارہ. میں پریشان ہوں مجھ کو بچا دو اپنا روزہ ہمیں اب دکھاؤ. یا حسین میری فریاد سن لو اپنا روزہ ہمیں. مولا مشکل کشا کے پسر ہو فاطمہ کے تو نور نظر ہو. ہو سخاوت کے گہرے سمندر، میرا دل اب نہ تڑپاؤ سرور، بہر معبود کے رحم کر دو، اپنا روزہ ہمیں اب دکھاؤ، یا حسین میری فریاد سن لو، اپنا روزہ ہمیں اب دکھاؤ۔ افضل الصلاۃ محمد و آل محمد، بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
We'd like to thank and welcome Sayyid Bilal for coming all the way to here, and it's nice to see you here rather than Zoom again. So inshallah, Sayyid will be with us for the next few days, for the next nights, inshallah. Let us recite 5 times I am Yujibu for all those who are sick, for the safety of the Muslims, for the safety of holy places, and for all those in need of du'as. And there are sick people all near and far, especially for them. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أما يجيب مضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب مضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب مضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سورة مباركة الفاتحة. بر حبیب خدا ختم الانبیاء محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين، والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والسولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكاذنية والحجج الردوية والجود التقوية والنقابة النقبية والحيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه. أما بعد فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل رب زدني علما صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir in particular, a second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We just passed the first of Rajab upon this day. And I've been coming to this community for a few years now, and I've given a number of lectures on different occasions. And many of you are familiar with my style that usually I take one topic, try to analyze that, and offer some sort of conclusion. But what I wanted to do today is something a little bit different. Instead of going with one structured topic, it was to bring different reflections and thoughts about the life of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and see what we can derive from those reflections and thoughts. Now, the first thing which comes from the life of the Imam is that his birth takes place in the 57th year after Hijrah upon the 1st of Rajab. The 1st of Rajab carries a great significance in that it is seen as the beginning of the Islamic spiritual time of the year. That spiritual season of Rajab, Sha'ban, Shahru Ramadan, it begins with this month. You know, many times people, they ask this question, but why is it within the religion of Islam there is an emphasis upon the lunar calendar as opposed to the solar calendar? When you look at the solar calendar, you find that there are many practicalities to going with the solar calendar. The time periods are structured. There's a direct benefit that we can see from the solar calendar in the impact on agriculture and organizing our lives. But despite that, you find Islam has taken the approach of the lunar calendar. And to answer this question, one can't answer this by going towards empirical data or scientific study. Because the Quran says when describing the lunar calendar, Inna iddata shuhuri indallah itna ashara shahra, that the number of months in the eyes of Allah are 12 months. Now some may say the solar months are also 12 months. How is this a dalil that it is referring to the lunar calendar? Because after this the verse says, فَأَرْبَعَةٌ حُرُمَةٌ, that of these 4 of them are sacred, referring toward those 4 sacred months where warfare was prohibited in the time period of the Arabs. You see, the key word within this ayat, the key phrase, is that this verse says that in the eyes of Allah in the Lahi. In other words, what this verse is pointing towards is that, O human being, that although through science and empirical testing and retesting you can understand the solar calendar, if you want to understand the significance of these lunar months, inna iddata shuhuri indallah, that the reality of these months are only with Allah, you have to come towards the door of wahi and revelation to understand these months. That's why it is through the traditions of Ahlul Bayt we understand Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan. And when you look at the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, you find that one of the titles of the month of Rajab is that it is asab, according towards that. You know, in Arabic, the verb sabba yasubbu means to pour. That this is that month where blessings are poured within this month. No, another analogy which has been given particularly by the Urafa and those who ascribe to the mystical circles is that these 3 months, Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan, they represent the 3 key time periods within your life. You see, when you look at the life of a human being, you find that there are 3 ages in a person's life which carry great significance. The first age is that age when they become baligh, because at that age you find responsibilities are put on your shoulder. Now you become accountable. The second age, which is of great importance, is the age of 33. Because the age of 33 is that age where the physical capacities, the capacity of a human being is at its peak. That's why, according to the traditions, it was at the age of 33 that Isa was elevated to the heavens. And Amir al-Mu'mineen upon the day of Ghadir was at the age of 33, and the people in paradise, their bodies will be equivalent to the age of 33 within paradise. But you find after that, the third age of significance is the age of 40. It is about the age of 40 that Sayyid Mahdi Bahrul Ulum, he quotes a tradition ascribed to the Prophet, which says, Man balagha arba'in wa lam ya'khudh al-asa faqad asa. That the one who has reached the age of 40 and they haven't taken the cane, the asa with them, that person has deviated. Now, does this mean that after the age of 40, every person needs to walk around with a cane within the mosque, or you're a deviant, or there's a different reality? You see, within the spiritual terminology, a cane, an asa, was seen as a companion of travel. That when a person would travel through different parts, it was that staff which would give them strength. In other words, if a person by the age of 40 hasn't begun that spiritual journey towards God, it doesn't mean that the door is closed, but your trial and your task has become much more difficult. And in that element, you find these are the 3 main ages within the life of a person. But these 3 ages, bulugh, the age of 33, the age of 40, you find they're represented within these 3 months, Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan. The month of Rajab is seen as that age of bulugh for a person. In other words, the month of Rajab is when you begin to lay that spiritual foundation. That's why Rajab has also been called the month of takhalli and emptying, that a person empties themselves of these worldly, these lowly realities, and they seek to connect themselves with Allah. That's why within this month, the greatest dhikr within this month is La ilaha illallah. In other months, to say La ilaha illallah is very difficult, because to feel that reality means trial and test and tribulation. But within the month of Rajab, to say this line doesn't bring difficulty upon a person. But then after that, you find we reach the month of Sha'ban, which is called the month of tahalli and decoration. That how did Allah decorate this month? On the 3rd of Sha'ban with the birth of Sayyid al-Shuhada. On the 4th of Sha'ban, you find that the birth of Aba Fadl Abbas. On the 5th of Sha'ban, Imam Zainul Abidin. On the 15th of Sha'ban, the Imam of the time. And you find when it comes to decorating the soul, the greatest dhikr in the month of Sha'ban is Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. So you see, Rajab begins that process of cleansing. The month of Sha'ban is that time period of decorating. And the month of Ramadan is that month where that spiritual progress, a person they begin today, you find that spiritual progress is manifested in Ramadan, and you find Ramadan is called the month of Tajalli. But when you look at this spiritual process in Rajab, Sha'ban, Shahr, Ramadan, you find that Allah has given us a wisdom that before any of these days of spiritual significance, the first occasion within these 3 months is on the 1st of Rajab, the birth of Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir. In other words, anyone who wants to take that journey towards Allah must come towards the door of Baqir al-Ulum, the one who would split open knowledge. You see, Rasulullah, Rasulullah, in a famous tradition which each and every person knows, which I won't go into depth, but I'll mention the gist of that tradition. Rasulullah, when Imam al-Hussein was born, Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari comes towards Rasulullah. And when Rasulullah looks at Jabir, he says, "Oh Jabir, this son of mine will have a son by the name of Ali. And that son will have a son by the name of Muhammad. His title will be Al-Baqir, O Jabir. And this individual sayabqarul ilma ilma." In other words, the word baqir in its etymological reality means when you split open the ground. You know, when a plant comes out of the ground, it splits it open and that plant, it begins to shoot forward. This is the one that he will split open that ground and ilm will begin to burst forth through Muhammad al-Baqir. And he says to Jabir, "Oh Jabir, when you meet this son of mine, give my salams towards him, O Jabir." You see, the salam of Rasulullah is not like when you and I say salam. Because the essence of the word salam is a type of unison and harmony between those two personalities. Rasulullah says, "Oh Jabir, give my salam towards him." It's stated that within the end of the life of Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, Jabir, he had become blind by that time period. And Jabir would sit in Medina, and according to one variation of the tradition, there's several variations, he would sit in Medina and he would say, "Al-Baqir, Al-Baqir." It's upon one of these occasions that as Imam Zainul Abidin is walking with Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, you find that Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, he gives his salams to Imam Zainul Abidin, and he says to the Imam that that young man who is with you, tell him to step forward and step backwards. You see, Jabir, when your vision goes, your other senses, they become better. Jabir knew that there was somebody else who was there with Imam Zainul Abidin, but he couldn't see that individual. So he says to the Imam, tell him to step forward and step backwards. At that point, Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari says, "Shama'iluhu shama'ilu Rasulullah." That this is the one, when he walks, his attributes are like the attributes of Rasulullah. And it's stated that Jabir bin Abdullah would fall and kiss the feet of Imam Zainul Abidin. So you find of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi afdalus salat was salam. Now, when it comes to the life of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, the impact of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, there's a very important tradition which really gives us an insight into the roles of the Imams within their time period. And that is that hadith which has been found in many early sources known as Hadithul Wasiya. Within that hadith it is stated, "Lam yanzil min as-sama'i kitaban musajjanan illa al-wasiya." That there was no book, there was no physical reality that came upon the Prophet except for a will was descended upon Rasulullah. And that will had 12 seals upon it. When Rasulullah passed away, he gave it towards Amir al-Mu'mineen wa mada ala ma kataba alayhi. Amir al-Mu'mineen acted after opening the first seal according to what was written within that seal, then to Imam al-Hasan, then to Imam al-Hussein. You see, when it comes to understanding imamat, many people, they have this misconception that the imam would act according to the society of the time. Many times you've heard this line that the reason Imam al-Baqir is because of the time period, and the reason Imam Zainul Abidin did what he did is because of the time period. That's a very simplistic understanding. The reality of the Imam is that when the Imam acts according to the Amr and the command of Allah. And the command of Allah has wisdom, that's why that reality differs. But it's stated that when Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, upon the martyrdom of Imam Zainul Abidin, he opens that wasiyah which was written for him, you find within that wasiyah, it was written, وَصَدِّقْ أَبَاكَ, that, O Muhammad al-Baqir, your first task and responsibility is to affirm and to make people believe the truth of your forefathers. The second responsibility you have is وَفَسِّرِ الْقُرْآنِ, that in your time period explain the realities of the Quran. And then after that it says وَوَرِّثْ إِبْنَكَ الْإِلْمِ, and to give knowledge towards your son Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. And then after that it says that لا يخشى أحدا إلا الله, that don't fear anyone except Allah, وَقُلِ الْحَقِّ فِي الْأَمَنِ وَالْخَوْفِ, and say the truth in times of fear and in times of safety. You see, why was Imam Muhammad al-Baqir given this wasiyah? And why was it important for him to carry out these tasks? You see, at that time period, Medina was the intellectual hub of that time. And in the time period of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, you find that there were different intellectual currents which were beginning to stabilize their school of thought. We begin to see in the time period of Imam al-Baqir, the different jurisprudential schools begin to set their foundations. The Hanafis, the Hanbalis, the Malikis, you find the Shafi'is, you find that those introductory discussions of these different schools take place in the time of Imam al-Baqir. You find that there are different theological currents. You find that there was a group who believed Muhammad al-Hanafiya was the Imam. You find there was a group such as the Murji'ites who would suspend judgment upon anyone else. You find there are different currents. But in that time period, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir was to speak what is true and to show people that reality. You see, what is that reality of Imam al-Baqir? You know, oftentimes when we look at the Imam, as I said, the holistic understanding comes from that divine perspective. But at the human level, one needs to connect with the Imam as well. That who is this Imam? This is that Imam that at the age of 3 and 3.5, he was in Karbala. To see your grandfather, your family members martyred, to see your family going through difficulties. You see, when you read the biographies of many of those individuals who are well-known criminals, or many individuals who carried heinous acts within this world, one common feature that you find in their biographies is that many of them went through childhood trauma. Many of them had difficulty as children. They come from broken homes. They were abused as children. They went through other psychological hardships. Imam al-Baqir witnessed that his grandfather was slaughtered at that age. But you find that this individual, despite that fact, he speaks with such confidence that he says, "Sharrika wa gharriba lam tajida ilman sahiyan illa indina ahlul bayt." That whether you go to the east or the west, you won't find true knowledge except with us, Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. So you find that level, that a person overcomes those difficulties, those traumas when they're working for a cause is present within the life of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. And you find people, they would come and they would test the ilm of the Imam. For example, one person, he comes to Imam al-Baqir and he says to the Imam that, tell me a time in history where 1/3 of the population was wiped out. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir says, oh man, there was no time where 1/3 was wiped out, but rather there was a time when 1/4 of the population was wiped out. You see, the Imam corrected the question of the person that this is what you were thinking. Then he gives that answer. And he says, this is that time when Qabil killed Habil. That upon the earth there were 4 individuals, Adam, the wife of Adam, Habil, Qabil. When one of them kills another, you find that 1/4 of mankind was wiped out at that moment. The man after that says, then I'll ask you another question. The second question I'll ask you is, show me within the Quran shay'an qaliluhu halal wa kathiruhu haram. Where in the Quran is it written that a small amount of something is halal and permissible, but a large amount of it is haram and prohibited? But where is it in the Quran? To consume a small amount is allowed and to consume a large amount is prohibited. The Imam says, when you read the story of the army of Talut and they reach the river, the Quran says those who take a handful from this river, those individuals would be saved. And those who take more of them would be destroyed. قَلِيلُهُ halal wa kathiruhu haram. After that they say, where in the Quran was there a prayer without wudu and a fast without any form of fasting, without food, that there was a fast which did not involve food or drink? The Imam says that salat is that salat where the Quran says, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. That indeed Allah and His angels give that salawat upon the Prophet. And that fast which didn't involve food or drink was the fasting of Maryam. After that, that individual says that what is that reality? That it only decreases but it never increases. That what is that reality? That it only decreases but it never increases. The Imam says that is the life of an individual. That lifespan, it keeps decreasing, it never increases. So you find in this way, Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir, he shows the reality of his ilm and he shows the value of ilm as well, because the Quran says, قُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. You know, many of us, we translate that this dua, it says, increase my knowledge. But if you look at the Arabic semantics within this dua, in reality, we are saying that, oh Allah, increase within me knowledge. That when knowledge is within the being of a person, you find that true knowledge becomes a part and parcel of that fabric. And a person who has true ilm is able to give guidance towards others. You see, true knowledge in the traditions of Ahlul Bayt is that knowledge which a person acts upon. And that is something which is there. If it's not acted upon, it is ignorance. It is something which doesn't exist in its reality and one can't give it towards others. You know, it's stated that an individual, he comes from Syria. And he would go and he would sit in the gatherings of Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir. And when he would sit in the gatherings of the Imam, he would listen towards the Imam even though he was a follower of Banu Umayyah. You know, one day afterwards, he says to the Imam that in my deen to hate you is something which brings one closer towards Allah. That he says to Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir, to hate you in my religion is something which brings me closer towards Allah. But the only reason that I come towards your gathering is because of husnu adabik. It is because I find that your etiquettes are one of beauty. I found you to be a mu'addab individual. I find you to be a man of etiquette. That's why I come towards your gatherings. You see, Ahlul Bayt showed that change happens at the practical level. If you look at all those individuals who convert or they change their lifetime, there's only a very small minority of individuals that change because of rational and intellectual arguments. That you give them a piece of evidence, they accept that evidence, and they come to the school of Ahlul Bayt or they change their life. That's something which is far and few, that's something which is rare. But oftentimes, what changes individuals is a human connection. It is akhlaq, it is morality, it is touching the heart of an individual. It's stated that when this individual was dying, he says that I want Muhammad Al-Baqir to bury me and to recite my Salat al-Janazah. You know, when that Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, he goes towards that person, he says to those individuals burying him, don't bury this individual, he hasn't passed away yet. They say, oh Imam, this person is unconscious, you're saying that he hasn't passed away? It's stated that that individual, he wakes up and he says, Ashhadu annaka hujjatullah, that I bear witness you are the proof of Allah, and you are that door which one enters through. If they don't enter through that door, they are destroyed. They said to him, oh man, what is it that changed you? You would say that on your deen is to hate Muhammad al-Baqir, and you are asking him to bury you. You are acknowledging that he is the hujjat of Allah. He says that when I was unconscious, I saw the malaika there. And when they were going towards me, at that moment they were told that Muhammad al-Baqir has made dua for this individual. He is not to pass away right now. So you find this is that reality of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. And one of those incidents where this reality of the Imam can be seen is that wisdom which the Imam embodied when he spoke to different individuals. You see, when we speak to individuals, we don't speak to everyone at the same level. If there's a community leader, we speak to him in a different manner. And when there's a child, we speak to him in a different manner. When there's an elder, we speak to them in a different manner. This is the wisdom of a person. In the same way, you find there are many traditions which show the advice of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. On one such occasion, you find the Khalifa of the time, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, he comes towards Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. You see, Umar bin Abdul Aziz is famous for a number of different reasons. Amongst those reasons is he gives fadak back towards Ahlul Bayt. The second reason is that he ends the ritualistic cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the family of Ali bin Abi Talib from the manabir and the pulpits. Another reason is that we find that the writing of hadith was banned, that the traditions of the Prophet couldn't be written down because certain historic personalities felt that they would be put on the same level as the Quran, and Umar bin Abdul Aziz is that individual who stopped it. Now, on one such occasion, you find he comes to Imam Muhammad al-Baqir for advice. And when he comes to Imam al-Baqir, he gives a reply that if the leaders of the world understood the reply of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, you find that this would be enough for governance and social administration. Because a leader of society, their primary concern is with their constituents. Their primary concern is for those who they are leading over. Imam al-Baqir says to Umar bin Abdul Aziz, when you govern over these lands, anyone who is older than you, consider them as if they are your father. And anyone who is equal towards you, consider them as if they are your brothers. And anyone who is lesser than you, consider them as if they are your children. In that way, if you keep this piece of advice in mind, you find that there would be no instability within your government. So you find Imam al-Baqir, he gives that piece of advice. But on another occasion, you find that Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi, he comes towards Imam al-Baqir. Now, who was Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi? You see, Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi was somebody who was considered Sahib al-Sir, somebody who understood the secrets of Ahlul Bayt. It's stated that he learns 50 to 70,000 hadith from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. And on one such occasion, one tradition says, he comes to Imam al-Baqir and he says, oh Imam, you've taught me all of these traditions, but you haven't allowed me to tell this towards anyone. Imagine having the knowledge of 50 to 70,000 hadith. Imam al-Baqir says, you're not allowed to share this with anyone. If one wants to be that companion of Ahlul Bayt, they did that through unconditional subservience towards Ahlul Bayt. Imam al-Baqir says that, "O Jabir, if you want this weight out of your shoulders, then go and dig a well and say into that well, وَحَدَّثَنِي Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir." Say to that well that Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir told me towards this. And O Jabir, if you tell these hadith towards anyone while you are alive, فَعَلَيْكَ لَعْنَتِي وَلَعْنَةُ أَبَائِي, that if you tell these hadith while I'm alive, then my la'na and the la'na of my forefathers is upon you. And if you hide these hadith after I die, then فَعَلَيْكَ لَعْنَتِي وَلَعْنَةُ أَبَائِي. So you see, this is Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. And many individuals, when they examine the seerah of Imama, they found that Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi was one of those companions who would carry the true understanding of Imamat. Because some companions would only understand Imamat as a rational concept, as a concept of leading society. But Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi understood that Imamat had an esoteric, a batini, and inwards dimension as well. So now when Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi comes for advice, it's going to be different when Umar bin Abdul Aziz comes for advice. So when Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi, he comes to Imam al-Baqir, he says that, "Oh Imam, give me advice." The Imam says, "Oh Jabir, I'll give you this advice, but after this we are to depart and never meet again." And when the Imam gives that advice, he says, "Oh Jabir, in dhulimta fala tadlim." That, "Oh Jabir, if anyone does dhulm towards you, if anyone oppresses you, then don't oppress them back, oh Jabir. Because oppression is not a solution for oppression. Oppression means you went outside of the bounds of what is allowed, and a believer does not go outside of those bounds." Then after that he says to Jabir, "Oh Jabir, in kudibta fala taghdab." And if somebody denies what you are saying, then don't get angry, oh Jabir. Wa in mudihta fala tafrah. And if somebody praises you, it shouldn't bring happiness within you. وَإِن ذُمِمْتَ فَلَا تَجْزَى. And if somebody blames you, it should not bring sorrow towards you. You see, the Imam is teaching a way of thought to understand this world towards Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. And then he says, "Oh Jabir, وَفَكِّرْ فِي مَا قِيلَ فِيكَ." That think about what the people are saying about you, O Jabir. Because you'll find two possibilities. In my words, you'll find two possibilities. The first is that what they are saying is true about you. In other words, whenever anyone says something negative about you, there are two possibilities. Either that rumor is true or it's false. There's no other third possibility. He says, "Oh Jabir, if what they say is true about you, then your falling out from the eyes of Allah is a greater musibat than falling out from the eyes of the people. And if what they say is false about you, then this is reward which you are accumulating, and this shouldn't tire you out, O Jabir." So you find in this manner, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, he gives advice after advice towards Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. But when you look at the life of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, you find that one of the great accomplishments of the Imam is that intellectual legacy which he leaves behind for the followers of Ahlul Bayt in the form of his traditions and in the form of his son, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi afdalus salat was salam. And with that said, I raise my hands in dua. And we say, "Oh Allah, through the right of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, allow us to benefit from that legacy which Imam al-Baqir has left behind." We pray for those who are sick and ailing within our communities. There are many individuals who are worried. There's many individuals who requested for du'as. Every individual has some sort of problem, some sort of difficulty, some sort of challenge. But this is the month of Rajab. This is that month which was called Shahrullah, your month, O Allah. through the right of Ali bin Abi Talib, help us within this month. Help those who are sick and ailing within this month. Allow us to receive the intercession of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Allow us to walk in the footsteps of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Allow for our love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad to increase. And we pray for the return of the final from Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And we pray to be with him. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
محمد وآل محمد. بآل محمد عرفت ثواب وفي أبياتهم نزل الكتاب بآل محمد عرفت ثواب وفي أبياتهم نزل الكتاب فهم حجج الإله على البرايا بهم وبجادهم لا يستراب بآل محمد عرفت ثواب بآل محمد عرفت ثواب. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. ہے پنجم امام آج ہی پیدا ہوئے، شہ خاص و عام آج ہی پیدا ہوئے، لقب جس کا باقر محمد ہے نام، وہی نیک نام آج ہی پیدا ہوئے، پدر سات اماموں کے اور خود امام، وہ ابن امام آج ہی پیدا ہوئے، ہے دادا حسین اور نانا حسن، وہ معصوم پاک آج ہی پیدا ہوئے. افضل الصلاۃ محمد وآل محمد. خدایا تو رحمت کا دریا بہا دے، محمد کے خاطر ستم سے بچا دے، خدایا تو رحمت کا دریا بہا دے، محمد کے خاطر ستم سے بچا دے. They are starting with Prophet Muhammad until Imam Zamana. They are all Muhammads. They are 5 Muhammads. So today we are celebrating the birthday of one of the 5 Muhammads. So with the blessings of Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir, inshallah, Ya Allah, accept our du'as. یہ ظلم و ستم کی جو آندھی چلی ہے، بور میں یہ کشتی ہماری پھنسی ہے، خدایا تو کشتی کو پار لگا دے، محمد کے خاطر ستم سے بچا دے، محمد کے خاطر ستم سے بچا دے. گنہگار ہم ہیں تیرے بندے مالک، ہم مخلوق تیرے ہمارے تو مالک، دعا مانگتے ہیں جبیں کو جھکا دے محمد کے خاطر ستم سے بچا دے محمد کے خاطر کورونا سے بچا دے تجھے بھی جو عزت جیے بھی تو عزت کے ساتھ جیے ہم مرے بھی تو عزت کے ساتھ مرے ہم ضلالت سے رنجو محن سے بچا دے محمد کے خاطر ستم سے بچا دے ہے شوق زیارت و حجو کا دل میں ہے مکہ میں پہنچے مدینے شہ کر بلا کے بھی روزہ دکھا دے محمد کے خاطر ستم سے بچا دے خدایا تو رحمت کا دریا بہا دے صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توءا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المأسومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان سيدي الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.